all aboard that's coming aboard. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome aboard this fine vessel of mine, the Mayflower. My name is Christopher Jones, and I am the ship's master, which means I am in charge. Now, when the wind is right, we will hoist her sails, and we will depart from the West Quay here, heading down Southampton waters into the English Channel, and then out across the Atlantic. And our destination, God willing, will be the Americas. So if I were you, I'd find yourself somewhere comfortable to make home for the next few weeks. You see, my Mayflower's not usually this crowded. She's normally a cargo ship carrying cognac and wine from Europe. But today, well, she's carrying you lot. So we are going to have to learn to get along. And that was the beginning of the story of the Mayflower ship. She would eventually set sail from the West Quay in Southampton on August 15th, 1620. But this wasn't the beginning of the entire story. No, this was just a moment in time, like a verse from a rhyme that started way back long ago. You could say it started in 1533 when the great King Henry VIII broke away from the church in Rome and established the throne as the head of a new church, the Church of England. Or perhaps it started with Bloody Mary in the 1550s as she led the land back to the Catholic Church. People soon learned if you disobeyed her, you got burned, and many lost faith in religion. Or maybe it was with Elizabeth I, as she swung us back to the Anglican Church, but many got left in the lurch as she allowed some of the powers and the structures of the Roman Church to remain. I mean, this is where our story begins. Because like many, what we saw in our churches did not match with what we saw in the Bible. And so a plan was hatched, and we would no longer sit in silence. William Bradford, that is my name. And from the town of Scrooby, I came to board the Mayflower in search of a new land. And with my faith strong in God, I felt safe in his hands. Now, Scrooby, that is a significant place. You should remember the name because it is famed as being the birthplace of our tale. It is there that we would gather to pray, to seek a new way, to worship the God that we believed in. We were unhappy with the church of the land and what the new king had planned. And now we looked for something different to satisfy our faith. We believed that the Church of England had strayed from being true to what God intended, and now a burden weighed heavy on our shoulders to stand up and to act. You see, under King James, things just were not the same. And we tried to make changes from within. But then new laws were passed, and well, some people grasped, and we became outcasts, no longer welcome, hunted by a king who wanted to bring an end to our objections. We were Puritans who wanted to clean up the mess of God's church that had digressed from being true to what we saw in the good book. But we found strength from the Bible and found that it was viable to meet secretly with others who shared our faith. We looked to the scriptures and we saw that the church should be pure and clean. We read in 2 Corinthians 6, verse 17, "Ye shall come out from among them, and be ye separate." And now we were desperate to do just that and go our own way. And so they called us the separatists. And we continued to grow, but soon we would know that England was no longer a safe place for us. King James passed new laws, which made it harder for them to meet, but the separatists would not be beat. And they persevered on their quest to find the best way to be the church that God intended. Now, they'd heard of a land where this could be, and so they agreed to travel overseas. And rather than stay in England, constantly in hiding, they planned a move to Leiden in Holland. They made their first attempt in 1607 to find their new heaven here on earth. But it did not go well, and some wound up in jail as they were rumbled by the king's men, and then told to return back to Scrooby and abide by the law. But they would try again. They were not defeated. If anything, they grew stronger. They didn't wait much longer before trying again. And now, some of them were successful. This was to be their fate, landing in Holland in the spring of 1608. And it was here that we were finally free across the sea, and we established a new church in a place called Leiden. Oh, my name is John Robinson, and I was elected to lead and to spiritually feed the believers that gather to worship and pray. Others soon joined us, and we grew, but deep down, I knew that this couldn't last forever. You see, Leiden was becoming tense as people were taking offense at things that were being said and done. Here in Holland, there's no laws about what you can write or print. And a chap called William Brewster, well, he picked up the hint that this could be used to help our cause. The lack of restrictions on the printed word meant that he felt spurred on to make use of this to spread our message far and wide. And although Mr. Brewster had been appointed to assist me in the Leiden church, he couldn't resist writing about his objections to how King James had ruled our homeland and the churches, and now his passion was fueled to tell anybody who would listen or to read his publications, which caused quite a stir and then much consternation for His Majesty back home. Mr. Brewster ended up being pursued for what he had written about the king, and so the only thing that he could do was to run. He fled from Leiden. He went into hiding, and, well, no one saw him for many months. The tensions in Leiden came to a head, and now the separatists felt led to start their search for a new land. You see, many of the believers felt unsure. They still felt there was more for them to discover. And so early on, in 1620, after plenty of years in Leiden, they started to research another move which would one day prove to be far more significant than any of them could have ever thought. A land called the Americas had been discovered, and new opportunities were being uncovered. A land that was ready to be explored by anyone willing to board a ship and sail across the Atlantic Ocean. Thomas Weston, that's my name, and funding potential travelers, well, that's my game. I work for a company called the Merchant Adventurers, and we had plenty of dough to help those who would go and establish a new colony on behalf of the king, and then start to bring back some of the goods from these distant lands. We had all the money. We just needed the people who would go on these journeys, though we would still reap all the benefits of their travels. You see, this was merely a loan to be paid back with interest when they returned home. And so, the separatists, now desperate to leave Leiden, started to believe that the Americas could be the place that they would call their new home. So they sent a Mr. John Carver to start making plans, to meet with Mr. Weston and all of his demands. And eventually it was agreed that a ship would be supplied. And so the believers in Leiden got ready to ride. They would travel to Southampton, and when it came time to set sail, they would make this journey on a boat called the Speedwell. And when they arrived in Southampton by ship, the Mayflower would be waiting for the next part of their trip. And Mr. Carver had made all of the plans, and now everything was in hand, and so here we were in Southampton, aboard the Speedwell and the Mayflower, waiting for the wind to power us out to sea on our journey of hope and faith, and a land where we could be free.
There's a new world waiting, no more deliberating. Now we're anticipating. The cargo is stocked and the sails unfurled. It's time to get sailing to that big new world. Many a day on a tidal wave, tossed and turned by the ocean. Barrel and crate and an unknown fate. Get your body in step with the motion. Navigate the way until you find a new day, hoping that there might be something more. This business ain't free on the open sea. We're always looking for a new shore. There's a new world waiting, no more deliberating. Now we're anticipating. The cargo is stocked and the sails unfurled. It's time to get sailing to the big new world. In 1607, 3 ships set sail. They were the first of many that would blaze a trail. And travelling to America, Virginia to be exact, setting up a colony, they made a pact. But what should they call it? Now what is in a name? So in honour of the sending king, they called it Jamestown. And ever since that day, everybody wants a piece of the new world that's waiting so the kingdom can increase. There's a new world waiting, no more deliberating. Now we're anticipating. The cargo is stocked and the sails unfurled. It's time to get sailing to the big new world. There's a new world waiting, no more deliberating. Now we're anticipating. The cargo is stocked and the sails unfurled. It's time to get sailing to the big new world.
They spent a short time there in the heart of Southampton's bustling port before they would depart. And down at the West Quay, both ships perched as supplies were gathered and prayers said in the Holy Rood Church. And then, before it was time for them to set sail, Mr. Carver thought it better to read them a letter that they had received from John Robinson back in Leiden. You see, he had decided not to go, but he wanted them to know that he was thinking of them and praying for them for success and favor. And now he wanted to warn them about their behavior aboard these ships that they shared with those who didn't believe the same as them and who would probably turn up their nose. And so he wrote to warn them of the dangers from these other passengers who they called the strangers. Dear Christian friends, from your pastor John Robinson back here in Leiden, but beside you in heart. My affections and thoughts are with you. With all of my heart I salute your endeavor, and now as you embark on this journey, may you never give up the hope that I know you carry. I feel it my duty, and because of my love, that I share with you some wisdom from above, of how you should live as you set sail so you know success and you will not fail. First, daily confess your sins to the Father. I'd rather you stay pure than be tainted by others. Confess what you know to be wrong, and those secret thoughts that left unchecked, they can weigh you down and start to drown your ambition. God has called you to walk a higher path, so you must stand taller and be purer for this task. Second, now you are right with God, take every chance to be right with each other. Don't smother a brother or mistreat those that you're with. Keep peace, show love, have faith, build up all around so that they can be all that they can be. Don't cause offense with the things that you say, and then don't take offense when others pass it your way. Stand strong, be patient, and trust in our God. He will help you each day with the right words to say, so be patient and kind in everything. Next up, be real with the love that you feel and profess to all who are on board. Look out for others, not just yourself, irrespective of wealth or position or power. Seek every hour to do good to all around, and then you will be found as being the salt and the light. Now, finally, my friends, as you join with others, ensure good governance. Maybe take a lead to draw up agreements to which all should heed, so that in your new land you don't just wallow, but establish good laws, both now and for those who will follow. And so, I bid you farewell, and this is my prayer, that he who has made the heavens and the earth, the ocean upon which you sail, will never fail to provide as he guides, and he will guard your heart as you follow his call. May we have reason to praise his name all the days. Fare you well, my friends. Fare you well. Both the ships were now ready to sail, and it was August 15th when we set out down Southampton waters, carrying husbands, wives, sons and daughters. We weighed the anchor and our journey had begun, now to be guided by the stars, the moon and the sun. But just after Mr. Carver had finished his speaking, turned out there was a problem. You see, the speedwell was leaking. We carried on for a while to see how she'd fare, but it was not looking good. So we came into Plymouth for repairs. Now, alas, the speedwell could not be mended. Some of them passengers, they got quite offended and decided that this was as far as they could go. The rest of them, well, they crammed onto Mans Mayflower. 51 men, 20 women, 3 of them expecting, 10 girls and 21 boys. Altogether, that made 102, plus my crew that eventually sailed out of Plymouth on September the 6th. By now, it was much later in the season, and it was for that very reason the conditions on board became pretty tough. And the weather whipped up storms that became too rough. Many of them passengers, they got sick. One of them, he died. Now, most of them were sensible, and they stayed down inside. But not me. John Howland, that is my name, and I was a servant on board. And one day I got bored of being shut away down in the lower decks. And so, when I felt a moment of calm and still on the ship, I ventured up onto the upper deck to get some fresh air. It was only fair, but little did I know that the storm was still strong. And before I knew it, the ship lurched leeward, and I tumbled seaward, and that could have been the end of me, but thankfully, I spotted the topsail halyard dangling over the side. And this is the rope that we used to hoist the sail. And so as I fell, I grabbed hold of it and held on for dear life, until some of the crew then hoisted me back on board, where I assured them that I wouldn't be back out on the upper decks again. So we continued for many days over the waves that crashed against the bow of the ship. We had planned to sail in the summer, but now, because of all the delays that had caused much malaise, we were sailing into the stormy season out on the open seas. And well, none of us pilgrims were seafarers by trade, which made the journey unbearable at times. We clung to our faith and our God-given mission, a vision of a hope and a new way of life in our promised land. And so we felt protected by God's sovereign hand. Now, all the time we were very aware of the comments and the glares from the others on board who did not share our beliefs. And although Pastor John Robinson had warned us not to make a fuss, there were often disagreements between those strangers and us.
We've come to take a stand stand in the new land. Give the king a hand in establishing his colonies there in the Americas. We're only going because there is this real buzz about what the undiscovered land could be. We venture out, even with all our doubts, see what it's all about. Yeah, we will travel on with one another to discover, if ever we weather the storms that we will face together. Truly we believe and trust the Lord our God will go with us. He will prosper and provide. We're safe under his watchful eye. Give us strength, Lord, in the fight to be the salt and be the light among the heathens gathered here. We long for you, Lord, to draw near. These crazed religious folk, yeah, they act like God has spoke, but to us they're just a joke on this journey of discovery. Here we are afloat now, all in the same boat. Now you better take a note now, cause we're not gonna change. We'll feast upon the wine and we'll feel just fine, crossing any line that seems as if it's there to hinder me. This is the life I choose, some you win, some you lose, but now I get to cruise to this new life that is there for me. Purify us, Lord, we ask to carry out this holy task. Pilgrims, you have called us here. Your perfect love replace our fear. Fill our hearts, renew our minds until a promised land we find. To you, O God, our sins confess. We ask, dear Lord, you grant us your success.
My ship was hammered by gales and high waves, with many close shaves that tossed those inexperienced passengers around like sand on a shore. Many got sick and, well, they became easy prey for teasing by my crew, who knew all too well the changing swell of the ocean deep. But then, after 66 days out on the ocean, with all the storms and commotion, we spotted the land that we had been waiting to see. It was November 9th when we made landfall. And now, for the first time, we could see Cape Cod, and we thanked our God that he had brought us here. The backside of the cape, it rose 100 feet high, like it was touching the sky as it came up out of the sea. The joy that we felt was like nothing before, because this was now the shore that we had been longing to see. After the persecutions that we had faced back home that had led us to roam in search of a new land, the disappointments of Leiden were a thing of the past, because now at last here we were. It was agreed by all that there needed to be a unity amongst us if we were going to build a new land where every man, woman, and child could live and thrive, not just survive. And so, the Mayflower Compact was drawn up a page and signed by the eligible gentlemen of a certain age, a document that would inform our future relations and then inspire the constitution of a brand new nation. In the name of God, amen. We, whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign Lord and King James, by the grace of God, having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of Christian faith and honor of our king and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia, do by these presents solemnly and mutually, in the presence of God and one of another, covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic, for our better ordering and preservation and furtherance of the ends aforesaid, and by virtue hereof to enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, and offices, from time to time as shall be most meet and convenient, for the general good of the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience. In witness whereof we have hereunder subscribed our names at Cape Cod on the 11th of November in the year of the reign of our sovereign Lord, 1620. And so that is the story of the Mayflower ship and her history-making trip across the Atlantic to the Americas and a brave new world. The Pilgrim passengers who were unable to cope with life in England had made a journey of hope. Their faith in God had kept them strong all along through the trials that they faced. He had protected and provided, gave them hope as he guided them from Scrooby to Leiden and now to this new land. The plans of God are sometimes a mystery, and now the Pilgrims are here as part of our history, a lesson to us all on the journeys that we make. Where is your hope on the steps that you take?
A step of faith was taken, and God didn't let them down. He gave them hope, and all their fears allayed. And though the journey was perilous, and God had led them there, and now we know that history was made. A sea of trouble had been crossed, hope was found when it was lost. There they stood, an open door, stepping up on that new shore. They braved the risks and took those first steps on their adventure, a journey of hope. Stepping stones who pioneered a way. They can inspire us on our journeys today. A sea of trouble can be crossed, hope is found where it is lost. There they stood, an open door, heading up on a new shore. They braved the risks, took those first steps on their adventure, a journey of hope. A sea of trouble can be crossed, a hope is found when it is lost. And if you stand an open door, looking out for a new shore, if you brave the risks and take those first steps on your adventure, a journey of hope. On your adventure, a journey of hope. On your adventure, a journey